Today is Sunday, May 30th. It's been raining pretty steadily for 2 days. And that's a good thing. My Supremos are starting to recover. And the zucchini is starting to perk up too. I think maybe these plants will survive. I've done some more research on persistent herbicides. And one of the things they recommend is to spread the soil out in a thin layer and keep it watered. That will help the herbicide break down and also wash the residue out of the soil. And I think that's why these plants are recovering, but the ones in the containers at the other gardener's location are not recovering. I still have 4 tomatoes here in the greenhouse. 2 I'm going to plant today. And the other 2 I'm going to take over to the container gardener and we're going to run a test. According to a recent paper published by the Extension Service at the University of North Carolina, reported instances of persistent herbicide killing plants are on the rise, and there's no practical way for a home gardener to run a test. The tests for herbicide residue are very expensive and have to be done in a laboratory. So what they recommend is a bioassay. So I'm going to take 2 mortgage lifter tomatoes and some green bean seeds over. We'll empty the soil out of one of the containers and replace it with soil we know is good. And then we'll transplant in the 2 tomato plants and some bean seeds, and we'll grow out the tomatoes and the beans side by side, and we'll compare the results. If the tomato leaves in one of the pots curl upwards, crinkle up, that's a sure sign of persistent herbicide. If the other pot does not suffer the same consequences, then we know it's something in the soil. So we'll run that test, probably start that tomorrow, and it'll need to run for about a month, and we'll show the results at the end of the month. Until then, I'm going to go ahead and get these other 2 tomato plants in the ground today. These are Super Steak hybrids. They've been in these 3-inch pots for 2 months. Obviously they're way overgrown and they need to get into the ground. They're about almost 2 feet tall. I can't wait for the grass to dry up so I can try out my new used lawnmower. It is a human-propelled rear bagger with a Briggs & Stratton engine, just like I wanted. If you don't have a place to grow tomatoes, here's an easy way to get started. I dug 2 holes about 2 feet apart, each hole about 1 foot in diameter and 1 foot deep. I fluffed up the clay in the bottom of the holes. I even found a broken off T-post. You never know what you're going to find in your garden. I removed about half of the clay from each hole. Now I'll fill it the rest of the way with compost, mix it in with the clay, and that'll be good enough to grow in this year. I will be using some chemical fertilizers because this soil is so depleted, but that should be enough to get the tomatoes to produce. These plants will be happy to get in the ground. They've been in these pots for 2 months. I'll strip off the lower leaves and plant these tomatoes deep. Look at that root ball. These are Burpee Super Steak hybrids grown from seed. Alright, my last 2 tomatoes are in for this year. I have a total of 38 tomato plants on the property. That should produce more tomatoes than we can eat. It's really important to keep your tomatoes labeled so you know what varieties you planted. I thought I was planting 2 Burpee Super Steak hybrids. But as you can see, the one on the right is a Burpee Super Steak hybrid and the one on the left is a mortgage lifter. I grabbed the wrong plant out of the greenhouse, which also means my controlled experiment for the persistent herbicide is going to have a minor variant in it because the 2 tomato varieties won't be the same. But I don't think that will affect the results. So that's all for today's video. I hope you all have your tomatoes in the ground. I've gotten feedback from people who got free tomatoes that their tomatoes are in the ground and they're doing well. And so my next video, we're going to tour someone's garden who has tomatoes in the ground. Happy gardening, everyone.